Hey, it's Samantha with the Rediscover Real podcast. I am so thrilled to be here with you. Are you feeling overwhelmed, confused, or stuck on a hamster wheel from constantly seeking external tools, validation, and buffering in a search for more joy and fulfillment? Rediscover Real means to pull back the curtain and return to the foundation, peeling away the layers of mindsets, identities, and beliefs that no longer serve us. As we choose to grow, move forward, and show up fully as God intended, because at our very core, inside of you, lies everything already, as God created you absolutely perfect. We get to uncover and rediscover what's inside of us, and then to expand into what we're capable of. In this space, we'll dive into topics on personal finance and budgeting, mindset and growth, relationships, network marketing, and entrepreneurship. I'm sure there'll be some laughter and possibly a few tears along the way. I'm on this journey and you're invited. I'm holding out my hand for you. Will you join me? Let's rediscover real together. Where in your life do you need to stop riding the decision line? All right, let's talk about something that really shifted things for me and continue to when I remind myself of this, because we can learn something, but until we apply it and oftentimes remember it and do the reps around it, it's one thing just to learn it and apply it one time. But then when you learn it and apply it and then continue to do the reps around it, that's one thing. But then we also oftentimes see things come up in other areas of our lives where we're like, oh yeah, I need to apply that same concept here. So today we're talking about the word decision and how we can apply this and what this looks like. So first of all, the definition of decision is a conclusion or resolution reached after consideration. Now, you had probably a pretty good idea about that. The root of that word is decide, obviously. And that decide actually comes from Latin roots, and it means to cut off. Now that puts a different spin on things, because oftentimes, especially I see this so much nowadays, people want to keep their options open. And it's not always a bad thing to keep your options open and to be curious about things, to learn new perspectives. That's not a bad thing. To keep your options open, or to keep an open mindset around seeing a different perspective from someone else, keeping an open mindset in looking for another way to, a different way to budget, or a different way to save money, or a different way to make money, or all of those pieces. But what I see a lot of, and I have been in this camp as well, I mean, this is always on the podcast, is coming from experience, is we often get caught in not actually wanting to make decisions, like true decisions. We'll say we've made a decision, but we keep our options open just in case, right? We see this a lot if you're in the dating world, where people don't really want to commit. They don't really want to decide. They don't want to cut off, right? They want to keep their options open. Well, just in case that doesn't work out. Not going to tell that person or remove that person from my social media or delete their number, or, we never talk to them. It's fine. They can stay on my Facebook, or they can stay on my Snapchat, or whatever. Or, oftentimes in finances and with budgeting, I see people do this a lot, not wanting to actually decide and commit, to go all in on something and to actually apply it. They're like, well, I'm going to dip my toes in here. We'll kind of sort of try budgeting, or we'll kind of sort of maybe try to add some extra income, we'll try network marketing, but we're not actually going to like decide and commit to it. We'll just like test it out. And then so often what I see people do, because they don't take ownership, they don't cut off and decide, is they don't see the results they want because they dabbled in it, whatever that it was, or they didn't have, like they weren't committed in their heart and in their mind. They dabbled with it. I'm not saying like to go all in on something without researching it, or like for it to be the only way and not to be open to it. But if you don't actually decide to do something and then follow through on it until you reach the end of that, and until you get to make the decision for what the next right step is for you, that's where I see people get caught in that all the time. So where do you ride that decision line? There's this point where we get off of that. And if there's areas in your life where you're like, well, I should be saving more money. Well, I should budget more. I should do this. And we're shoulding all over ourselves. That's not helpful at all, because then you end up with some shame and some guilt and all sorts of other things going on. That doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve your life. Well, it does serve you. It serves you in ways, and you get to figure out what that is. And this was a really impactful moment as well. Does it serve you in moving forward in your life? Or is it serving you in our brains are wired to avoid pain and seek pleasure? Our egos are trying to keep us safe. So if by stepping out and doing something unfamiliar, it's going to feel uncomfortable, and that's okay, that's a good thing, but it's going to feel unfamiliar. It's going to feel different because it's not normal. So how can you say, okay, ego, I got you. I'm safe. You're safe. All is well. God's got me. This is, I have looked at this, I'm not jumping 300 feet off of a building hoping for a parachute to show up. I have made safe decisions. I'm not being reckless with my finances. Maybe you're wanting to get into investing. You have learned, maybe, and you can test out the waters and do it, in a smart way. It doesn't mean, same with like looking for another stream of income or adding more income. It doesn't mean you go quit your day job tomorrow and, you have to, make a full-time salary by next month with this other stream of income you're looking at. How can you do things in smart ways, but also be committed to that direction and what's a priority? And that's what it comes down to is, so then when we talk about decisions, if you're like, well, I make decisions. This is where I used to be. I was like, well, I make decisions. Great. So what are the results you're getting? And that stings a little because the results you're getting are a reflection of your priorities. So you could say you've made the decision to add another stream of income or to save money and to put money aside every month for your vacation fund or for an emergency fund. But if you aren't actually doing it, if you haven't actually built the emergency fund, if you haven't actually done the actions to build the other stream of income, then you're just talking about it. You haven't actually decided. You haven't actually like cut off other options, right? You're still like, well, but I saw this thing that I really wanted to buy, and that was more important to me. That was a higher priority than building my emergency fund. Well, but I really wanted to, have some nights out with friends or sit in front of the TV and just turn off from the world, and I didn't really feel like having to work in the evenings and build another stream of income for my family, for my future, for my life, to take the financial stress off. I'd rather sit in what's familiar. And if you're like me, where you grew up with a lot of language around finances and experienced it even into a lot of, for most of your adult years, where finances, while we can see abundance in everything, while we had to be very careful with where we prioritized our money, and there not being a lot of money outside of the baseline for survival needs, even though there you can fully see abundance in so many ways. But for there being money is, we can always make more money if that's a decision that we make. But when you sit in, well, this is where I am, and you sit in that victim swamp of like, well, this is how much money I have, and this is all I have, and this is all I can do with it, and you see scarcity. And if you grew up with a lot of that like me, then oftentimes you end up in this place where you get comfortable and it's familiar to have to talk yourself out of wanting more things, to say, well, no, I don't really want that. Well, no, I don't actually need that. Like if any of my friends can tell you, if they've gone shopping with me, I am a professional at talking myself out of something that I love and would love to buy, because I can talk myself out of it and say, well, no, that's not a priority. Like, you shouldn't be spending that money. That money can go other places. There's other things that you want to do with that money. And that's not always a bad thing. But I have talked myself out of a lot of things that would actually have really benefited my life and made life easier, were important. But I was like, no, let's not do that. And I'm actually going to dig into that more in another podcast, because there's a lot more to unpack there. But coming back to that decision piece, where do you make a decision? Where do you ride that decision line versus where do you actually commit to something? Where do you cut off? Like, there's no like, well, maybe sort of like, yeah, I'll try it out and we'll see if it works. Well, like if there's extra money left over at the end of the month, then I'll put that towards my emergency fund. Where do you do that in your life? You just finished another episode of the Rediscover Real podcast. My hope is always that you come away encouraged. And if you found this valuable, would you share it with a friend? And be sure to tag me on social media. I love seeing your takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. And I would so appreciate it if you took a second to rate and review this podcast so that more people can find it. Also, take a peek in the show notes for a link to my website that has a special gift just for you for listening today. As always, I'm on the journey and you're invited. Let's rediscover real together.